So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the last chapter of the second canto, and I'd like to welcome everybody and seek the blessings of Radha Krishna, Krishna Balaram, Gaunitai, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, so that we continue with the overview of the Bhagavatam and the recitation of all the verses. And I'd like to request Ananda Lila. So thank you so much, Mataji. You're welcome to do any invocations you like before you start.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank
Krishna
you.
to all devotees. My Dandavat Pranam. Yes, we shall start. Shri Nityananda Chandram Patita Sharanadam Gauradam Tam Bhajeham. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 2, Chapter 10. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Shri Sukha Uvacha Atra Sargo Visargascha Sthanam Poshanamuttayaha Manvantare Sanu Katha Nirodho Muktirashrayaha.
Okay, so who would like to read? Lina, you can read for a while if you like.
Thank you.
Good.
Sri Sukdev Goswami said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manners, the science of God, returning home, back to Godhead, liberation, and the Samam Bonam.
Dasamasya visuddhyartham navanamiha lakshanam varnayanti mahatmanah shrutenarthena chanjasha.
To isolate the transcendence of the Samam Bonam, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic interference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages.
Bhutta matrendriya dhiyam janma sarga udarhitaha brahmano guna vaisamyat visargaha paurusha smitaha.
The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga.
Sthitir Vaikuntha Vijayaha Poshanam Tad Anugraha Manvantarani Saddharma Uttayaha Karma Vasanaha.
The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind, under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The manners and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work.
Avataranucharitam Harischashanuvartinam Pumsam Isha Katha Prokta Nanakyanopabramhitaha.
The science of God describes the incarnations of the personality of Godhead and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees.
Nirodhosyanusayanam Atmanah sah saktibihi Muktirhitvanyatarupam Swarupena vyavasthitihi.
The merging of the living entity, along with his conditional living tendency, with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu, is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up changeable gross and subtle material bodies.
Abhasascha nirodhascha yathosti adhyavasyate sa ashrayah param brahma paramatmiti sabhyate.
The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth.
Yodhyatmiko yam purushaha soshav evadhidevikaha yastatro bhaya vichedaha purusho hiyadhibhotikaha.
The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adhidaivich. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adhipatic person.
So last verse, huh? And Leela.
Ekam ekatara bhave yadanopalabhamahe titrayam tatrayo veda sa atma swasrayasrayah.
All three of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter, is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Fantastic. So let's just have a look at a little bit of this verse, this section of the Bhagavatam. So this is entitled Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. The last chapter of Canto number 2. And the first 9 verses describes the 10 subject matters of the Bhagavatam. In fact, every Purana has either these 10 subject matters or at least a minimum of 7 of these subject matters. Otherwise, it's not considered to be a Purana. So what are these subject matters of the Bhagavatam, which are dealt with in the Bhagavatam? The creation of the universe. So we saw how it talks about Sarga and Visarga, Sarga being the initial creation by Mahavishnu, and Visarga is the creation by Lord Brahma, the secondary creation. Subcreation, this is Lord Brahma's creation. Planetary systems, so it's another subject matter that is discussed in the Bhagavatam in some detail, especially in the 5th canto. Protection by the Lord. So this is quite an important aspect because we need to understand that we are very dependent on the Lord and how important his protection is. The creative impetus, that's one of the points of the Bhagavatam. And the creative impetus is twofold again. It's initially coming from Mahavishnu and then from Lord Brahma. The change of Manus. So we see the effect of Vedic time on creation. Science of God. So this is a very important aspect of every Purana. Some people think God is just, some hairy-fairy mumbo-jumbo thing. but actually there's a science behind it. It's a science of Godhead. Returning home back to Godhead, very important aspect of Bhagavatam. Liberation is another separate subject, because liberation means something different from returning home back to Godhead. Liberation can have a rather narrow meaning, includes merging into the Brahma Jyoti, which is not really returning back to Godhead. And finally, the glories of Lord Krishna, who is the shelter of all the other 9 topics. And Bhagavatam is probably the foremost scripture in terms of glorifying Lord Krishna. The whole Canto number 10 is dedicated to pastimes of Lord Krishna, as well as Canto 11 and 12, partly 12. But Canto 10 includes 90 chapters. It comprises at least 1/3 of the whole Bhagavatam dedicated to Lord Krishna. So really amazing canto. So the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is an expansion of these 10 cantos. So we can chant another up to another 7 verses, up to checks number 16, and have a little break at that time. So Purna Mataji, would you like to continue reading?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Okay, good.
पुरुषोन्दं विनिर्भिद्य यदासो स विनिर्गतः आत्मनो यनं अन्विञ्छन् अपोस्राक्षिच्युचिः शुचिः.
After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purushavtar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka.
तास्व अवात्सित् स्वश्रेष्ठासु सहस्रं परिवत्सरान् तेन नारायणो नाम यद् आपः पुरुषोद्भवाः.
That Supreme Person is not impersonal and therefore is distinctively a Nara or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nar. And because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayan.
द्रव्यं कर्म च कालश्च स्वभावो जीव एव च यद् अनुग्रहतः सन्ति न सन्ति यद् उपेक्षया.
One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all exist by his mercy only, and as soon as he does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent.
एको नानाद्वम् अन्विच्छन् योगतल्पात् समुत्थितः वीर्यं हिरण्मयं देवो मायया व्यसृजत् त्रिधा.
The Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone.
अधिदैवम् अथाध्यात्मम् अधिभूतम् इति प्रभुः अथैकं पुरुषं वीर्यं त्रिधा भिद्यत तच्छृणु.
Just hear from me, half the potency of his lordship divides one into 3, called the controlling entities, the controlled entities, and the material bodies, in the manner mentioned above.
अन्तः शरीर आकाशात् पुरुषस्य विचेस्ततः ओजः सहो बलं ज्ञानी ततः प्राणो महानसुः.
From the sky situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Mahavishnu, sense energy, mental force, and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force.
अनुप्राणन्ति यं प्राणः प्राणन्तं सर्वजन्तुषु अपानन्तम् अपानन्ति नरदेवम् इवानुगाः.
As the followers of a king follow their lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move, and when the total energy stops endeavoring, all other living entities stop sensual activities.
Okay. So we're getting into some detail into the creative process. Mahavishnu expands. Mahavishnu, so this is the original Vishnu, known as Karana Dakshay Vishnu, lying on the casual ocean. He enters in each universe as a second expansion of Garbhadakshay Vishnu. So that original Mahavishnu enters, from him comes all the millions, billions, trillions of universes from the pores of his skin. And into every single universe, he expands as the second Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is lying on this Garbhodaka, should be Garbhodak ocean. That Supreme Person is not impersonal. So this is a point made right at the beginning of, I think text number 11 of this chapter. Important to understand that God is not just some light. He is the source of that light. And he is the effulgent person who is the source of that light. And therefore he is distinctively another person, not an ordinary person. It's the Supreme Person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara. Nara. And because he lies down on that water, he's known as Narayan. The sky, the senses, even the living entities, the total sum of the living entities are generated from Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. So they're both known as Mahavishnu. So when creation is destroyed, we all go back into Mahavishnu, lying there dormant until the next creative impetus takes place. So that's up to then. And now next is, wow, 20 verses up to 36. Leela, Maji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
प्राणेनाक्षिपता क्षुत्रेद् अन्तराजायते विभोः पीपासतो जक्षतश्च प्राण्मुखं निरभिद्यत.
The living force, being agitated by the Virat Purusha, generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened.
मुखतस्तालुनिर्भिन्नं जीवः तत्रोपजायते ततो नानारसो ज्ञानी जीवयायोधिगम्यते.
From the mouth, the palate became manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this, all the different tastes came into existence, so that the tongue can relish them.
विवक्षोर्मुखतो भुन्मो वहनिर्वाग्व्यार्हितं तयोः जले चैतस्य सुचिरं निरोध समजायत.
When the Supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when he was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended.
नाशिके निरभिद्येतां दोधूयते न भस्वति तत्र वायुर्गन्धवहो घ्राणो नसि जिघृक्षतः.
Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated, the nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air carrying smell also became manifested.
यदात्मनि निरालोकम् आत्मानं च दिदृक्षतः निर्भिने हि अक्षिणी तस्य ज्योतिश्चक्षुर्गुणग्रहः.
Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God's Son, the power of vision, and the object of sight all became manifested.
बोध्यमानस्य ऋषिभिर् आत्मानस्तज्जिघृक्षतः कर्णौ च निरभिद्येतां दिशः स्तोत्रं गुणः ग्रहः.
By development of the desire of the great sages to know, the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, and the objects of hearing became manifested. The great sages desired to hear about the self.
वस्तुनो मृदुकाठिन्य लघुगुर्वोस्नसीततां जिघृक्षतस्त्वन्निर्भिन्ना तस्यां रोममहीरुहाः तत्र चान्तर्बहिर्वातस्त्वचा लब्धगुणोवृतः.
When there was a desire to perceive the physical characteristics of the matter, such as softness, hardness, warmth, cold, lightness, and heaviness, the background of sensation, the skin pores, the hairs on the body, and their controlling deities, the trees, were generated. Within and outside the skin is a covering of air through which sense perception became prominent.
हस्तोरुरोहतुस्तस्य नानाकर्म चिकीर्षया तयोस्तु बलवान् इन्द्र आदानम् उभयाश्रयम्.
Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and the controlling strength, and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested, as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod.
गतिं जिगीषतः पादौ रुरुहातेऽभिकामिकां पद्भ्यां यज्ञः स्वयं हव्यं कर्मभिः क्रियते निर्भिः.
Thereupon, because of his desiring to control movement, his legs became manifested, and from the legs the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision of this act, all varieties of human being are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice.
निरभिद्यत्तशिष्णो वै प्रजानन्दामृतार्थिनः उपस्थासीत् कामानां प्रियं तद् उभयाश्रयम्.
Thereupon, for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring, and tasting heavenly nectar, the Lord developed the genitals, and thus there is the genital organ and in controlling deity, the Prajapati. The object of sexual pleasure and the controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord.
उत्सिक्षोर्धतुमलं निरभिद्यत वैगुदं ततः पायुस्ततो मित्र उत्सर्ग उभयाश्रयः.
Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate and refuse of eatables, the evacuating hole, anus, and the sensory organ thereof developed along with the controlling deity Mitra. The sensory organ and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deity.
Oops, sorry.
आसिस्रिप्सोः पुरः पुर्या नाभिद्वारम् अपानतः तत्र पानस्ततो मृत्युः पृथक् कृत्वम् उभयाश्रयम्.
Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both, namely death and the separating force.
आदित्सोर् अनपानानाम् आसन् कुक्ष्यन्त्रनादयः नद्यः समुद्राश्च तयोस्तुत्सी पुस्तिस्तदाश्रये.
When there was a desire to have food and drink, the abdomen and the intestines and also the arteries became manifested. The rivers and seas are the source of the sustenance and metabolism.
निधिध्यासोरात्मा मायां हृदयं निरभिद्यत ततो मनश्चन्द्र इति संकल्पः काम एव च.
When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of mind, the moon, determination, and all desire became manifested.
त्वक्चर्म मांसरुधिर मेधुमचाष्ठिधातवः भूमि अप्तेजोमयः सप्त प्राणो व्योमाम्बुवायुभिः.
The seven elements of the body, namely the thin layer of the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air.
गुणात्मकानीन्द्रियाणि भूतादि प्रभवा गुणः मनः सर्वविकारात्मा बुद्धिर्विज्ञाय रूपिणी.
The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences, happiness and distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation.
एतद् भगवतो रूपं स्थूलं ते व्याहृतं मया मह्यादिभिश्चावरणैरस्तभिर्बहिरावृतम्.
Thus, by all this, the external feature of the personality of Godhead is covered by gross forms such as those of planets, which were explained to you by me.
अतः परं सूक्ष्मतमम् अव्यक्तं निर्विशेषणम् अनादिमध्यनिधनं नित्यं वान्मनसः परम्.
Therefore, beyond this gross manifestation is a transcendental manifestation, finer than the finest form. It has no beginning, no intermediate stage, and no end. Therefore, it is beyond the limits of expression or mental speculation and is distinct from the material conception.
अमुनि भगवत रूपे मया ते हि अनुवर्णिते उभे अपि न घृणन्ति मायाश्रिस्ते विपश्चितः.
Neither of the above forms of the Lord, as just described unto you from the material angle of vision, is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know him well.
स वाचकतया भगवान् ब्रह्म रूपदृक् नाम रूप क्रिया धत्ते सकर्मा कर्मकः परः.
He, the personality of Godhead, manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, quality, pastimes, entourage, and transcendental variegatedness. Although he is unaffected by all such activities, he appears to be so engaged. Prabhuji, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Keep forgetting. So this section of the Bhagavatam explains, Sukadeva Goswami describes how from the universal form of the Lord, which manifests from Mahavishnu, it's not Mahavishnu, it just manifests from Mahavishnu. Various manifestations take place. For example, when the Supreme Purush desires to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated. The nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air carrying smell also become manifested. That's text 20. In this way, all the material manifestations expand with all the controlling demigods in their allotted places. So it's quite an orderly expansion. Living beings receive material bodies according to their desires. So when we enter, when the creation comes to an end, we enter the body of Mahavishnu together with our desires. Those desires are still there. They just become very dormant. And then when we again become manifest, those desires are still with us. It said actually the only thing that the living being has are desires, nothing else. We only have desires. And those desires get fulfilled through the function of the Supreme Lord and time and material energy, etc., etc. So interesting to understand this. The desires continue. So therefore, if we continue to retain material desires, they'll follow us. You know, we're going to be led by them. We're going to be led by them. The idea of human life is to reduce our material desires, increase our spiritual desires. These material desires, they will keep us in this world. Whereas if we have desires which are transcendental desires, then they will liberate us from this world. So there's another aspect to this. He, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, qualities, pastimes, entourage, transcendental variegatedness. Although he is unaffected by all such activities of creation, he appears to be so engaged. So this is one of the inconceivable aspects of the Supreme Lord. Very difficult to understand. How he creates, but yet he's got nothing to do with it. So it's one of those very difficult to understand concepts of the Supreme Lord. So I just wanted to also have another look at one of these verses. See, when Sukadeva is explaining about the universal form, neither of the above forms of the Lord, as just described unto you, from the material angle of vision, is accepted by pure devotees of the Lord who know him well. So the universal form is subordinate to his actual form, his spiritual form. So this is an interesting aspect of the Supreme Lord. So let's just see how many words. Oh, this is right to the end now. Up to text number 51, please.
Prajapatin manun devan rashin pitra ganan prithak siddhacharana gandharvan vidyadhrasura guhyakan किनाराप्सरसोनागान् सर्पान् किं सुरुसानरान् मातरक्षः पिशाचां च प्रेतभूतविनायकान् कुष्माण्डोन्मादवेतालान् यातु धानान् ग्रहानपि खगान् मृगान् पशून् वृक्षान् गिरीन् नृपसरीसृपान् द्विविधाश्चतुर्विधायिन्ये जलस्थल नभोकशः कुशला कुशलामिस्राः कर्मणां गतयस्त्वयिमाः.
O King, know from me that all living entities are created by the Supreme Lord according to their past deeds. This includes Brahma and his sons like Daksha, the periodical heads like Vaivasvatamanu, the demigods like Indra, Chandra and Varun, the great sages like Bhrigu, Vyas and Vashishta, the inhabitants of Pitralok and Siddhalok, the Charanas, the Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Asuras, Yakshas, Kinnaras and angels, the serpentines, the monkey-shaped Kimpurushas, the human beings, the inhabitants of Matralok, the demons, the Pishachas, ghosts, spirits, lunatics and evil spirits, the good and evil stars, the goblins, the animals in the forest, the birds, the household animals, the reptiles, the mountains, the moving and standing living entities, the living entities born from embryos, from eggs, from perspiration and from seeds, and all others, whether they be in the water, land or sky, in happiness, in distress, or in mixed happiness and distress. All of them, according to their past deeds, are created by the Supreme Lord.
सत्वं राजस्तम इति तिस्रः सुरनरनारकाः तत्रापि एकैकसो राजन् भिद्यन्ते गतयस्त्रिधा यदैकैकतरुण्याभ्यां स्वभाव उपहन्यते.
According to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures who are known as demigods, human beings, and hellish living entities. O King, even a particular mode of nature, being mixed with the other two, is divided into three, and thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also.
स एवेदं जगद्धाता भगवान् धर्मरूपदृक् पुष्णाति स्थापयन् विश्वं तिर्यन्नरसुरादिभिः.
He, the personality of Godhead, as the maintainer of all in the universe, appears in different incarnations after establishing the creation, and thus he reclaims all kinds of conditioned souls amongst the humans, the non-humans, and the demigods.
ततः कालानि रुद्रात्मा यत् सृष्टमिदमात्मनः सन्नियाचति तत्काले घनानीकम् इवानिलः.
Thereafter, at the end of the millennium, the Lord himself in the form of Rudra, the destroyer, will annihilate the complete creation as the wind displaces the clouds.
इत्थं भावेन कथितो भगवान् भगवतमः नित्थं भावेन हि परं द्रष्टुम् अर्हन्ति सूरयः.
The great transcendentalists thus describe the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the pure devotees deserve to see more glorious things in transcendence beyond these features.
नास्य कर्माणि जन्मादौ परस्यानुविधीयते कर्तृत्वा प्रतिषेधार्थं माययारोपितं हि तत्.
There is no direct engineering by the Lord for the creation and destruction of the material world. What is described in the Vedas about his direct interference is simply to counteract the idea that material nature is the creator.
अयं तु ब्रह्मणः कल्पः सविकल्प उदाहृतः विद्धि साधारणो यत्र सर्गाः प्रकृतवैकृताः.
This process of creation and annihilation, described in summary herein, is the regulative principle during the duration of Brahma's one day. It is also the regulative principle in the creation of Mahat, in which the material nature is dispersed.
परिमाणं च कालस्य कल्पलक्षणविग्रहं यथा पुरस्ताद्व्याख्यास्ये पाद्मं कल्पम् अथो शृणु.
O king, I shall in due course explain the measurement of time in its gross and subtle features, with the specific symptoms of each. But for the present, let me explain unto you the Padmakalpa.
सौनक उवाच यद् आहनो भवान् सुत क्षता भागवतो तमः चचार तीर्थानि भुवस् त्यक्त्वा बन्धून् सुदुश्चजान्.
Shaunak Rishi, after hearing all about the creation, inquired from Sutta Goswami about Vidur, for Sutta Goswami had previously informed him how Vidur left home, leaving aside all his relatives who were very difficult to leave.
क्षतुः कोशारवेस्तस्य संवादोऽध्यात्मसंसृतः यद्वा स भगवांस्तस्मै प्रीतस्तद्वम् उवाचः. ब्रूहि नस्तद् इदं सौम्य विदुरस्य विचेष्टितं बन्धुत्यागनिमित्तं च यथैवागतवान् पुनः.
Shaunak Rishi said, "Let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidur and Maitreya, who talked on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidur and replied by Maitreya." Also, please let us know the reason for Vidur's giving up the connection of his family members and why he again came home. Please also let us know the activities of Vidur while he was in the places of pilgrimage.
Sutta uvacha Ragya Parikshita Pristo Yad Avochan Mahamunihi Tadvo Bhidhyasye Srinuta Ragya Prashnanusarataha. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Sri Sutta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So that's the end of Canto 2. Quite a tough set of verses, actually. But let's have a quick look at the overview. From the Lord, according to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, darkness, all beings expand, such as demigods, humans, or beings from hell. He, the Supreme Lord, as the maintainer of all in the universe, appears in different incarnations after establishing the creation. Thus he reclaims all kinds of conditioned souls amongst the humans, non-humans, and demigods. So why does he incarnate? Why is he come to this world? Actually, only one reason: to reclaim us. That's the only reason he comes to this world. We know yada yada dharmasya, etc. That it comes to protect, establish religion, destroy irreligion. These are all subsidiary points. The main reason he comes is he wants us back in his spiritual world, in the spiritual world. So he comes to catch us, take us back. So there is no direct engineering by the Lord for the creation and destruction of the material world. So he doesn't really get involved, but so that we don't think it's material nature is the creator. These descriptions are given. What is described in the Vedas about his direct interference, is simply to counteract the idea that material nature is a creator. This is one of the points. Of course, he is the impetus, but he's not directly involved in the creation of it. Any questions on this? This leads on to the third canto, which is all about this creation. And it's quite, third canto is often described to be one of the toughest cantos to get their mind around. But this is a prelude of the third canto. So I'd like to thank Ananda Leela for reciting that very beautifully. Amazing.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Well done. You've got another couple of weeks at least. I think Shruti won't be back until 12th of March. So April, yeah. Any questions, any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, when the description was, going on about how different sense organs came into picture, it started with tummy and hunger, first. Okay, I understand that connection, but I didn't see anywhere brain coming, or did I miss it?
Yeah, no, it'll come. The intelligence comes. You will see it in Canto 3. How, from the mind of Brahma comes intelligence. Yeah. It'll come. I think, as you said, it's just giving us a little flavor.
As you said, Canto 2, itself I found quite tough. Thanks to you for the little summaries. But if I were to go, shlok by shlok, I would be lost somewhere.
Yeah, Canto 3 is going to be interesting.
I'll be all ears.
Yeah, no, it'd be good. It'd be very interesting. No, thank you for really sort of putting your effort into it. It's not easy, especially when you have so many other commitments, and especially you have so many commitments. So very good, very impressive.
Prabhuji, this is my, energy source. So I think it's the power of Srimad Bhagavatam and the way
Yeah.
you teach it. It's amazing.
No. Bhagavatam in itself is something else. It's just unique, very unique.
I think the word that comes to my mind every time, is sweetness. So I
Yeah.
think it's very sweet.
Yeah.
It's funny enough to say a book to be sweet, but that is the feeling that it always leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like into a ripened mango.
Yeah.
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, Prabhupada said that because somebody asked him, where should we start? He said, anywhere. Bhagavatam is sweet, just like a mango is sweet. Wherever you bite the mango, it's sweet, So Bhagavatam is like that. So no, thank you. Fantastic. Really good. Really appreciate you give us enthusiasm. So thank you. And thank you to all the devotees. If there's no more comments, questions, we can conclude today and look forward to seeing everybody for the third canto next week. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.